Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I guess I'm Hayden.
And this is...
Until the End of Crime.
Have you ever had a vivid dream that you woke up from and learned that the timing of it could not have been coincidental?
Yeah, I can tell the future.
That's your answer to the question? You can tell the future? I asked you if you'd had a dream.
I have prophetic dreams and they're vivid.
Okay, give me an example of one.
Okay. So, when I obviously don't think I'm a prophetic dreamer, but
Just a prophet.
if the shoe fits, stretch it out until it's a 4E and keep walking. When I was younger, my mom's father got really sick, but I didn't know what was wrong with him. I just didn't know. And I remember I had a dream where my grandfather was being drowned in a bathtub, and it was by Winifred Sanderson.
Sure.
But it happened at my Aunt Audrey's house. And she had a really, really big bathtub, the biggest bathtub I'd ever seen. And Winifred Sanderson was drowning him in there. And she wrapped him up in this waterlogging tarp that soaked up the water and kept it around him. And then she flew him off and he died. But it was very vivid. I remember the imagery still. And 2 weeks later, my grandfather died, and one of the health maladies that they determined to be present was that he had a lot of fluid around his heart. So what can I say? Just call me Nostradamus.
I'm going to call you, I guess, Hayden.
Honestly, that's better than Hilbert, so rock on. So no, but that's the time I had a dream that seemed to parallel reality pretty closely. Mm-hmm. I think I was 8. But yeah, I've had other dreams that felt weirdly synced up with what was current or what was incoming. Mm-hmm. So I do think, while I may not be religious, there is an element of spirituality to my being, to my humanity, to my experience of this earth and what lies beyond. And so I do think it's possible that sometimes people do have, the word premonition seems too strong. So does prophetic dream. But I think intuitively, spiritually, maybe there are sometimes things that our subconscious and soul know before we do.
Yeah. Cosmic, maybe?
Cosmic, yeah. It makes it sound a little more spacey than what I'm envisioning, but I do think it's part of a grander scheme, part of something that's bigger than just me as an individual or you as an individual or any group of people as an individual. Maybe even bigger than human consciousness, something that does run deeper and wider and more far-reaching. So maybe cosmic is the right word. I don't even remember what your fucking question was anymore. This feels very metaphysical now. And so I'm just sitting here thinking about my deeply held beliefs and what do I think and how do I process reality, which listeners, not well. Let me be honest with you. I do not process reality well, but we are here and I am processing it.
Okay.
Processily Cecily over here. Wait, what do you think about dreams and all the shit I just talked about? Because I don't want to seem like the only space cake.
I don't disagree with what you were saying. I think that sometimes people dream things that either are enlightening in a situation that they may not understand all of the nuance about. Like you were saying, you didn't know what your grandfather was sick from, but you were able to see in a dream kind of a representation of what he was suffering from.
Mm-hmm. I think that what my brain is gravitating towards, not to move backwards in our conversation, but are you familiar with Carl Jung?
Yeah.
I believe he was the theorist that posited about collective human consciousness and how we all share a pool of unified knowledge through this unified consciousness. And I think that that's maybe kind of where my thought processing stems from in terms of humanity, consciousness, processing, and that access to knowledge that's beyond our firsthand experience. So for anyone who's interested, you can check out the collective works of Carl Jung anywhere you can find fine academic reading materials.
The brain is so complex and it's not fully understood. So I think that it's very possible
not even
that
close.
Right. It's possible that our brains have so much more awareness of things that we don't even have an awareness of. This does feel like we're going down a slippery slope here.
So much beyond consciousness.
So,
Yeah, we've already sloped it up.
yeah. Maybe a rabbit hole is more likely where it seems like we're heading.
I'm ready for you to tell me whatever you're going to tell me.
All right. So Elizabeth Akinleye woke up suddenly on the morning of June 19th, 2024 at 5:10 from a vivid dream of her friend and coworker Maria wearing a blue dress with her long black hair flowing behind her near turquoise water floating. Maria Coto moved to Yonkers, New York when she was a teenager. Her family came from El Salvador, and despite Maria's desire to visit her home country, she never quite got around to it. When it was time for Maria to choose a career path, she opted to go into social work, working for the Department of Social Services for Westchester County.
A girl after my own heart, social work.
She is all of 4'8" tall, with a personality to match, because we all know someone whose larger than life personality is bursting out of a smaller than average build. She loves her labels and is very into fashion. Her phone case.
She picked the wrong profession, honey.
Her phone case, car keys, water bottle, purse, and wallet are all Louis Vuitton. Her sunglasses are Chanel, and she and her dog Bailey, named after the Irish cream, have what I can only assume are matching Burberry coats.
Cute.
Described as a shopaholic, Maria is also a very generous person, particularly with her clothes. Her coworker's granddaughter is often the recipient of name-brand hand-me-downs when Maria goes through her closet. There was a time where a client showed up at the Department of Social Services office having just left a domestic violence situation with her daughter. It was just the two of them and what they were wearing that made it out of the situation. And when Maria learned of this, she showed up the next day with bags of clothing and essentials for the mother and daughter to have to help them get back on their feet, keeping tabs on them after the fact to make sure that they were still doing all right, despite them not technically being her clients. She's obviously a compassionate woman who truly cares about people. She also really cares about how she presents herself to the world, with coworkers joking that she has never had a bad hair day. And Maria will gladly take any excuse to celebrate something or someone, turning minor holidays into a celebration and taking people out to dinner for their birthdays and inviting people over for hers.
Maria's my kind of girl.
Yeah, I don't think that you're in the minority. I think a lot of people who know her love her.
Yeah, there's a lot to love.
Yeah. She threw a pajama party during a snowstorm in Poughkeepsie, and there were only 5 people in attendance, but they had come together to have a good time, weather be damned. Maria knew how to change a situation from negative to positive. Her charisma seemed to me to have a gravitational pull. She hosted a Halloween boat ride for a group of friends, so not only was she someone who knew how to make virtually any situation fun, but she was always up for some new, fun way to celebrate things. Sadly, on Christmas Day of 2023, I believe, Maria's mini golden doodle Bailey passed away, and Maria took it pretty hard. Can relate.
Understandably.
In April of 2024, I think, because the timeline here is a little blurry, because I couldn't tell exactly from which point she transferred offices, quote, 5 weeks ago.
Okay. I love when sources do that. That's really a fucking help.
Yeah. But either way, she switched from the Child Welfare Division at the Peekskill Department of Social Services to the White Plains office and was assigned to a housing unit. On May 12th, Maria drove to the cemetery in Yonkers where her mother is buried to lay flowers on her grave and spend Mother's Day with her, in a way. On May 14th, Maria was out doing home visits. She was responsible for covering the Peekskill and Yonkers areas. And in the middle of the day, she picked up her friend Dayanara Lazara from their office building.
That's a really cool name.
I like the name as well.
Dayanara Lazara?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking pretty punk. I like it.
Yeah. She picked Dayanara up from their office building so they could go to lunch together. Dayanara, her daughter, and 3 other friends all celebrated Easter earlier in 2024 at Maria's new home in Danbury, Connecticut, only about a month after Maria moved in. Just to show you that these friendships extended far beyond the walls of the work they did together for the DSS. So at lunch, they chatted, they exchanged advice for one another, just two friends going out to any standard workday lunch. After they were done, Maria needed to go back to finish her home visits for the day. So she dropped Dayanara back off at the office and headed to South Street. Once she arrived at 900 South Street, she approached the door and knocked. A short while later, Maria ran into a nearby apartment. It's not entirely clear how things transpired after she knocked on what turned out to be the wrong door. Maybe she introduced herself as someone working with the government or indicated that she was with Child Welfare Division. Either way, when she entered the neighbor's apartment, she was allegedly being followed by a 31-year-old man named Hasim Jenkins, who was heard by witnesses shouting at her, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you, bitch." Sentiments that he yelled repeatedly at Maria, according to those who heard and saw the attack.
Do you think most people know how dangerous it is to be a home visiting social worker?
I think it's so obvious that it's dangerous because you're going in and one, you're either following up on some sort of claim that's been made against someone, or you're basically showing up and accusing them of doing something wrong or bad parenting or not being able to care for themselves. You're going in and making accusations, and I don't know that there are any humans who handle that well.
Yeah, I mean, when people hear social worker, they think Mariah Carey from Precious. They think, for lack of a better term, child snatcher. And so, what's rough is that she actually did work, it sounds like, to protect children and help families. But home visits, I made home visits as a hospice social worker who provided emotional and resource support to patients on services as well as their family members. And we had special phone call codes so we could alert people that there was potential for violence, potential for gun violence, that we were in a dangerous situation. And we were coached that if you were in that position, you act as if there is something terribly wrong with the patient, and you say, "I need to make a phone call to such and such doctor." And when you do that, you call the office phone and you relay a doctor's name that's agreed upon in the agency or organization as the code name. And that's how they know to dispatch police to your location immediately. And so I don't know what it is like to work for DHHS, but they are incredibly dangerous professions in terms of workplace hazards that are the unforeseen circumstances of what humans might do.
When you say what most people think of when they think of social work, what I think of, and it's probably because I'm far too enmeshed in the true crime space, but there was a social worker that was just doing a routine home visit that the people that she was visiting, they had planned to kill her because they didn't want their children taken away or something. That case, I can't think of anybody's name in the case, but that case is what I think of. That is the only thing that I've been able to think of since you said that you were going to go into social work. That's what I think of. I think of the dangers of going into someone's home and not knowing what you're going to be met with, not knowing who you're going to be met with, not knowing anything. You're going in representing yourself as part of a government agency, and not everybody is very welcoming of government agencies coming into their homes.
I would be willing to say that a large part of her client population would not be happy to have any kind of government agency in their home. And they are probably distrustful of the government for really valid reasons. Anyway, that's kind of a personal issue because people don't understand or necessarily care about the value that social workers bring to the functioning of society. And so therefore they don't understand the immense amount of risk they assume by being a social worker that makes home visits. And so what you're telling me right now was one of my greatest fears in completing social work.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit of a rough one. It's also very recent. I mean, it was 369 days ago.
Yeah, just a little over a year. Okay, let's hear what happens.
It was apparent to the resident of the apartment that Maria had been attacked to some extent prior to entering their apartment, likely by Jenkins, and had sought refuge in the nearby dwelling. By this point, multiple people had called into emergency services, alerting them to an attack in progress on the 900 block of South Street. It was just a few minutes after 3 p.m., and when the Peekskill police arrived on the scene, they found Maria with injuries that were described as severe. Apparently, the attack attack was unprovoked, and allegedly Jenkins had been witnessed punching and kicking Maria. It was also noted that he was wearing heavy boots. Maria was found to have facial fractures, brain swelling, and brain bleeding, which caused her to be taken into emergency surgery and subsequently placed on a ventilator to breathe.
Oh my God.
This was very difficult for everyone who knew Maria because they were incapable of comprehending why something like this would happen to Maria, not the woman who began singing, despite sounding like a cat screeching, at 4 p.m. every day because they only had one more hour left before they could go home. Not that Maria ever truly clocked out because she was always helping and serving others. But now she was laid up in a hospital with all of that vibrant life missing from the office and their days. The police had taken Jenkins in on the 14th of May. He was still on the scene when they arrived and was charged with second-degree attempted murder, first-degree assault, burglary, and robbery once they discovered he had Maria's phone in his pocket. In response to Maria's attack, Westchester County expressed that they would be increasing safety measures for social workers. They would implement a system where, on a case-by-case basis, social workers would have an escort while they were doing home visits.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it would have prevented the situation considering she knocked on the wrong door.
Right.
And she may not have requested a buddy for this particular case that she was following up on. But
Sure. I'm curious what kind of matrix they would use to determine when a situation would be high risk and when someone should also escort the social worker, because volatility, I mean, while measurable, is measurable under clinical diagnostics and assessment, not simply, oh, well, here's their known criminal history.
or the area of town that they live in or whatever other thing that they may
Or their
use.
socioeconomic class, or their race or ethnicity.
Right.
But I digress.
I took issue, and it seems like you are as well, with, in particular, the case-by-case basis piece. It feels almost like a PR Band-Aid or lip service, because I'm cynical, and I imagine that social workers who feel connected the way that this office in particular seemed to be, which, again, was more familial than just coworkers, would already willingly take steps to ensure that everyone felt comfortable and safe during their home visits if there was a cause for concern about a certain home.
Right. I don't think that Maria would have kept that to herself. And like you just said, she knocked on the wrong door. So part of this is almost a moot point, but it feels like social workers usually have such large caseloads that there is no time to make such considerations.
Right.
You have to get through it and get through it and get through it. I mean, when we talk about, and of course, I don't have knowledge of New York State because that's where they are, right?
Right.
Yeah, Yonkers, Poughkeepsie. In Texas, like CPS workers in the state of Texas are so chronically overworked that the burnout rate is unreal. I've heard horror stories from Texas CPS social workers that essentially say, I have to block book so many clients, so much of my caseload, and then I'm expected to complete notes in a way that keeps me from ever giving the kind of details I need to make sure that things are how they should be, and then I'm expected to still do more. And I know that they are overburdened. So being able to do the kind of impact calculus and analysis that would be necessary to know if I need a buddy or not wouldn't always be something I would be able to do.
Right.
And so it just feels kind of insincere to say we're going to do this on a case-by-case basis when it doesn't sound like they have any kind of metric established yet anyway.
Not that a couple things, right? One, not that I found in the sources that I found. I just found that this was kind of the precipitating catalyst for these conversations that I'm surprised that in 2024, there wasn't already something in place. One, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other pieces of this later, but yeah, it's an interesting thing to throw in, the case-by-case piece, to make it sound like you're doing something, to make it sound like something is going to change.
I think bottom line, much like teachers, much like other helping professions,
Police.
social workers should be given the time and the utilities and the materials needed to do their job well and to do their job effectively. And what I'm hearing is that wasn't the case for Maria or probably any other social worker in that department.
Yeah.
So.
When I say police, I do mean that they should put resources into training more. But yes, I kind of lump those three in together a lot because it is public service. It just looks different for each piece.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good representation of the service sector.
So the commissioner of the Department of Social Services did say that a security service company is a necessity. And it does seem that some caseworkers were provided with escorts. And while doing field visits, all caseworkers wear panic buttons now.
Okay. That does feel like a significant investment. It feels like something that is meant to, I mean, not only work as a mechanism for getting immediate help, but also as a deterrent to the people that you're visiting.
Yeah. It's funny that you say the first part because I said this is probably the more significant addition that may have afforded Maria help in the interim, potentially preventing Jenkins from being able to allegedly cause as much trauma to her body as he ultimately did.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, on the morning of June 19th, 2024 at 5:10, Elizabeth woke up suddenly from a vivid dream of Maria, wearing a blue dress with her long black hair flowing behind her, floating. Elizabeth did not have to get up for work since the office was closed in observance of Juneteenth. One of her colleagues called her a few hours later to let her know that right around 5 that morning, Maria had succumbed to her injuries, right around the same time that Elizabeth was dreaming that she was ascending to the clouds, 37 days after she was put on life support for knocking on the wrong door. After Maria died, the charges against Jenkins were upgraded to 2 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree burglary, third-degree criminal possession of a weapon, first-degree robbery, and resisting arrest.
Can you remind me what is the difference between a first and second degree murder?
First degree is premeditated.
Okay.
Second degree is probably crime of passion.
Fucking crimes of passion.
I started the whole conversation. I'm so irritated with myself.
Your fault. Crimes of passion is your fault.
I just didn't know that you were going to ride so hard for crime of passion being an effective defense.
Whoa, I don't want to say rode so hard. I just feel like it's worth exploring and it could be real.
You were like, if you called me and that was the defense that your attorney was putting forward, I would be there for you. I would be like, yes, crime of passion. That's what happened.
Yes, bitch, I would. I would be there. I don't want you to go to prison for life. Worse yet, be executed.
Okay.
What do you want me to do? Just let you fry?
No, I'm not saying that.
You want
but
me to
I
be
don't
like,
need you to
yes,
try
that
to
bitch has been
excuse
having
the
homicidal
behavior.
thoughts forever. Ever
just
since
don't-
I met her.
No, we can call it second degree murder charges and we can come up with a defense, but I don't want the phrase crime of passion uttered ever. By and large, I don't know that I'm a passionate person in general.
I think you're pretty passionate.
Well, I know you're going to say that.
I
And I
mean it.
also know that it always feels like it's got a negative connotation when you say it.
No, I don't mean it that way. You just have fervent beliefs. Or you play devil's advocate to a crazy extreme.
Except for crime of passion.
So I don't know what you want me to say.
That's you for crime of passion. That's not
You're-
me.
You're certainly not dispassionate. Like, that's not true. You could be maybe a true neutral on the passion scale.
It definitely depends on what we're talking about.
I don't think I'm necessarily passionate.
Same.
Right, but it's true for me.
I don't agree with that. So I'm going to carry on.
Carry on. Carry on, my wayward son. Hold on, though, really quickly. When it comes to passion and me, is it passion if you're, you know what? Never mind. But you know how I am. I don't really, am I willing to be direct? Yes. Do I want to engage in a long form argument? Not for anything. I don't know if I care about anything enough to argue about it for a sustained amount of time. I'm
You
like,
don't
fuck
because
it.
you're passionate about your belief. You're not going to be swayed in your belief.
Yeah, I would just much rather evacuate the dance floor. You're right. I'm wrong. I've been an idiot since birth. Let's move on. Rarely do people find that satisfactory.
Yeah. But now that we're on the same page,
Okay, now that we're on the same page, we're both passionate people.
we
Right now,
both think of the other person as passionate.
Anyway, wow, what a digression. Back to Maria.
Okay. Jenkins pleaded not guilty on July 30th, 2024 to all charges against him.
Just said, yep, did it.
No, not guilty.
Oh, I thought you said guilty. I was like, wow, this is a record finish.
No. So I don't know exactly how we got here specifically with regard to Maria and Jenkins. It's conjectured. It's conjecture.
What are you saying? So sorry. I didn't expect you to get it wrong twice.
I think I could probably go 3 times.
The first time you went conjecture, then you said conjecture. So you don't normally fuck up twice in a row like that, like I do.
That's just not true.
That when it comes to saying words out loud, that is true.
Okay, we're literally in the sad part and we're laughing.
Literally part of our tagline is a true crime comedy podcast. I don't know what you want me to say.
I just think we should have probably kept the comedy, before she died.
I don't know where comedy ever belongs in this bitch, but here we are.
That's fair.
What? Okay, so he said not guilty to all of it.
Right.
Okay, how did that get us to conjecture?
I said I don't know exactly how we got here specifically with regard to Maria and Jenkins. It's conjecture. I can't say it. I just can't say the word.
That is crazy. I've loved this. I think it needs to stay in because people had to listen to me fucking spell peel 18 times. I can't believe... listen, it's too funny. It's so funny. Conjecture.
I don't even know what it's supposed to sound like. I'm so far removed from the word right now. It's surmised in one source.
Who loves synonyms now, bitch?
Me. Except for I'm not going to go through and list every single synonym for the word. That would be you. You'll launch off and I'm like, why are we 15 synonyms down the road right now? We didn't even need one synonym.
I don't know why I do that.
I don't either. Probably a glitch. You're just glitching.
Always. Okay, continue. Jesus.
It's surmised in one source that Maria was possibly in the home of a client when Jenkins allegedly attacked her. Obviously, several sources mentioned that she was at the wrong apartment, so just throwing that out there. It seems important to discuss the fact that Jenkins has a recorded history of violence. Mm-hmm. On November 25th, 2011, a police officer witnessed 19-year-old Jenkins punch a 16-year-old in the face shortly after leaving a club party around 11:20 p.m. His sister, Quintasia, was present, and while the officer was arresting Hasim, she pulled him off of her brother at least long enough to allow him to flee the scene to the 900 block of 2nd Street. I'm not sure.
This is a wild family.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there was a misprint there because I don't know how we ended up on 900 South Street and 900 2nd Street. But I'm just going to point out that they were both explicitly stated and it was 13 years apart. But it might just have been a South Street and 2nd Street, but the same 900 block number.
That doesn't seem totally impossible.
No, it doesn't seem impossible, but the number is usually different when you move. Like the street number. So I'm just pointing out that 2nd Street and South Street, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a misprint. It wouldn't be too far reaching for me if he spent most of his life, or at least his adult life, in the same area, possibly the same home.
Right.
After that incident, Jenkins did later turn himself in and faced second-degree assault charges, resisting arrest, and interfering with governmental administration. His sister was charged as well with the role she played intervening during his arrest. On October 20th, 2023, Jenkins was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct outside of the Field Library, where he had been ordered to leave the area. He not only refused to comply with the order, but he then struck a relative of his that was in the area. He was facing a maximum of 15 days for that and was scheduled to appear on November 2nd. He failed to appear. December 14th, he was arraigned, pleaded not guilty, and was released on his own recognizance.
What does recognizance mean exactly in the context of release?
That he's being released with the understanding that he is responsible for appearing for his hearing. He's not having to report to anyone other than to show up for his hearing. He's not having to...
So he relies on his own cognition, like his own cognitive state. Okay.
Yeah.
He is responsible and he knows that.
Mm-hmm. I also think that it's implied with ROR that there's no bail that has to be paid for him to be released home.
Okay.
Especially because if he were detained at a jail for that time, after 2 weeks and a day, that would have been time to serve if he was found guilty and was given the maximum sentence. So charging him or keeping him would have been maybe, it wouldn't have made sense in this situation.
Got it.
January 11th, 2024, he failed to show up for his hearing. February 1st, he failed to show up for his hearing. March 14th, he failed to show up for his hearing. Rather than issuing a bench warrant for his failure to appear not once, not twice, not even just 3, but 4 times, his hearing was rescheduled, yet again by the judge, for April 18th. At this hearing, he requested a bench trial, which was granted and set for May 16th, which would have been 2 days after his attack on Maria. That hearing was pushed back to May 30th, with the other case pending against him. And I did not find anything after that regarding the disorderly conduct charges, but I think it's probably safe to assume that he was brought in for that while he was in custody.
Given his criminal history, given the not just 1, 2, 3, 4 missed hearings, and I know this is the point you're illustrating, it's really frustrating to learn that what happened to Maria could have been easily avoided if that judge had decided, oh, sorry, you want to break the law and not follow through with your release on recognizance, I'm going to issue a warrant. I know it's more complicated than that.
Right. Would it have saved her, though, if he was given the max and sentenced to 15 days? Would he not have still been at that address on May 14th?
Right.
If he had shown up for his January hearing, February, March.
I don't know.
It's hard to know, but it is, because it's not like he's got this very extensive storied history of being violent. He's got 2 incidents. Punching someone in the face who is a minor is pretty egregious. But he was 19 when that happened. He's 31 now. It's just hard to know if it would have done anything. But I don't know, because he showed up for the April. He showed up in April.
Yeah, after he missed 4 times.
Right.
I don't know. It just feels like, and we've talked about this, and I know we're going to talk about it till the end of fucking crime, but the justice system doesn't always seem so just.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer. I don't know if approaching it from the perspective that I've adopted is necessarily a healthy one, if it is one of justice or retribution, if it's one of hopefulness that Maria's life could have been spared. But it seems like an unfortunate consequence of a system that does not always provide justice and definitely doesn't always provide rehabilitation.
Yeah. With him only facing up to, 2 weeks max? Half a month. If he had shown up for any of those, even if it was just to, set a trial date, wasn't it? It was a pre-trial hearing because on the 18th they filed for a bench trial. So I don't know. It's hard to know.
Well, there is no knowing.
Right.
Just thoughts to ponder.
Yeah. So Maria's loved ones show up for his hearings, and they vow to show up to all of the hearings that pertain specifically to her case. Her goddaughter, Judy Yanez, not only wants to make sure that Maria is not forgotten in this case, but she wants Jenkins to be found guilty and incarcerated without the chance of parole, hoping that this will prevent someone else from becoming an unsuspecting victim of Jenkins again, assuming he is found guilty of these charges. The 1-year anniversary, so listeners, just so you know, we're recording this on May 18th. We're getting ahead a few episodes because I am going to be doing a venture back over to the States. I have a vacation that I'm going on, so we're trying to get ahead. So you're not going to hear this until June, but at the recording of this, the 1-year anniversary of this senseless attack of Maria Coto was 4 days ago. An article written by Jim Roberts of the Peekskill Herald was published on May 14th, 2025. Roberts has been reporting on this case for nearly a year. Jenkins was scheduled to appear the day after the article was published for a pre-trial hearing, during which a trial date would be set. His defense counsel is having a psychologist interview Jenkins to report back to his court-appointed attorney, and in response, the district attorney has also indicated that they would be seeking a psychologist to conduct an interview of Jenkins as well. Jenkins' attorney, Angelo McDonald, said he believes there's a possibility that the trial will be set to begin at the end of July or beginning of August, but he thinks it's more likely that it will be scheduled for after Labor Day. As of this recording, the trial date should have been scheduled, but I was unable to find that information about when it would be taking place. With the charges brought against him, the minimum that Jenkins is looking at, if found guilty, is 15 years to life. The maximum amount of time he could be sentenced to is 25 years to life. He has been in custody since his arrest. The following information is what was presented to the grand jury during the indictment. According to Jenkins, he had gotten cigarettes from the store, gone to his uncle's apartment, and smoked one. A blonde woman knocked on the door with papers that she attempted to show him. He claimed that he believed he was being attacked, and so he punched Maria, who he alleged he perceived as an assailant.
A 4'8" woman was his assailant? Okay.
2 witnesses had seen this initial violent assault and saw Maria flee into a nearby apartment. The witnesses alerted emergency services to an assault in progress, and they arrived on the scene within minutes and were directed to the apartment into which Maria had fled and been followed in by Hasim Jenkins. When the emergency responders entered the apartment, they saw Maria splayed on the floor, covered in blood, with Jenkins standing over her, also covered in blood on his clothes and boots. Jenkins was commanded by police to surrender, defied their command, and cursed at them, at which point he was tased by the officers. While being handcuffed, he continued to curse at the officers and at Maria. At some point, not long after being detained, Jenkins made spontaneous claims that Maria had attempted to stab him and that he had not harmed her. He also relayed the events as such. He got to the apartment, smoked a cigarette from the store. A blonde woman knocked on the door and showed him papers. He punched her thinking she was a threat to him, then kicked her in the head. The police showed up, tased him, and then arrested him.
Seems like he did a bit more than that.
Yeah, I mean, chased her, telling her he was going to kill her.
Facial fractures?
Well, he was wearing heavy boots and kicking and, I think, stomping on her head. I mean, those who knew Maria remember her as a kind and warm, but also tough and courageous woman. Someone who went above and beyond to help and serve the families that their division was working with, her coworkers, her friends. She's described as radiant and having had an infectious charisma. She worked in an office with a staff of 40 people, the smallest office that their division has. So they're close. I think I've relayed that throughout, but that's part of why. It's because it's the smallest office, I think, in New York State. And she'd been there for 12 years. She was nearing retirement, which was when she wanted to travel back to El Salvador, where she had come from. Her coworkers were her friends and her family in many ways, with her celebrating major milestones and holidays with them. She was able to connect with families in the area that only spoke Spanish, which can be a very isolating experience in a country that, to that point, did not have a national language, although English is predominantly used. She was a fashionista who wore heels often, possibly because she was only 4'8". Someone said that it was hard to imagine she was only 4'8" because they never saw her without heels on. She's described as having been elegant. She loved some of the finer things in life, like a really nice wine. She loved going out to eat and grabbing a coffee at Starbucks. Even Maria's clients felt as if she was an extension of their family. When the attack was initially reported, the victim was not named, but clients called the office crying, asking that they confirm that it was not Maria. They said they didn't know who to call now when things came up. She volunteered time at the local diaper bank and gave out her personal phone number to people if they ever just felt like they needed someone to talk to. She had the heart of a servant, probably a result of her strong Christian faith. Whenever she and Elizabeth found themselves working late together, their conversations would often turn to how grateful Maria was to God and how strong her conviction was in him. This is why, in part, Elizabeth thinks she was visited in that dream by Maria right around the time she was passing over. In the corner of the office she worked in, a memorial is set up to remember her. A ribbon from the flowers at her funeral is framing a picture of Maria. They have other flowers, words that they have written to describe her. Just this way of processing and working through their grief, but also remembering her spirit that she infused into their building every day and keeping that alive. Earlier this year, New York State Senator Pete Harckham and Assemblymember Dana Levenberg introduced legislation that is designed to put in safeguards for agents, particularly CPS, that interact with clients in an external setting. They held a press conference to discuss this on the anniversary of Maria's attack. And that is the tragic and senseless murder of Maria Coto.
I'm trying to take an inventory of how I feel and what I think because
it feels personal, because it's somebody who went into the same line of work as you. And even though she served in a different capacity, it still feels very close to home.
Yes, for sure. I think an element of that is that violent crime can be so indiscriminate, and no one deserves to be the victim of a crime. No one deserves to be murdered. No one deserves to be beaten within an inch of their life just to succumb to their injuries a month later. But I also feel like it's so deeply unfair for it to happen to the best of people, to people who spend their life in servitude to others, and for people who exemplify selflessness and are a friend to all, and try to live in a way that genuinely uplifts others. The world is worse for not having Maria in it.
Yep.
And I would love to say that I could say that for everybody, but you simply can't. There are some people that if they met their end, it would make relatively no impact. But Maria sounds like she was someone who was actively changing lives, as evidenced by her clients calling in and saying, please say it's not Maria. Who do we call now? And that's especially true from the perspective of being a bilingual or Spanish-speaking social worker. Oftentimes, those clients genuinely have no one else. They can't just be connected to someone else within the agency. Maybe they can use translative services, but those are rocky at best.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this case, yes, absolutely, social work connection, but just also this overwhelming sense of grief. How many children, how many families will suffer because Maria is not there to provide assistance? And I think that's what bothers me the most.
Yeah. Not to get political.
Not to do this thing I do on the reg.
Not to get political, but Maria was an immigrant, and I don't think that her killer was. Just setting that there.
Just very casually laying that down. Do with it what you may.
Yeah.
Good work. Nice case.
Thanks.
Not nice, but informative, done well. Deeply depressing.
Yeah. A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more of good people being harmed, please subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating and leave a review.
Make sure that you recommend us to a friend. And if you are able and willing to help us produce this podcast, sign up for our Patreon.
Head to our show notes and find the link for our Patreon. Sign up for the supportive bestie tier. It is only $2 a month. Make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out with questions or less depressing episode suggestions.
Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.